Sometimes the storm outside isn't the real problem, it's the storm inside. My dear friends, but I know life doesn't always move the way we want it to. Sometimes it tightens around the chest, sometimes it feels like everything is slipping away. And in those moments, the world tells you to be strong, but no one tells you how to breathe again. So today, let's walk together not to escape tough times, but to find relaxation right in the middle of them. Because peace isn't found when life is easy, peace is discovered when life is hard. Sometimes in life, the greatest relaxation does not come from fixing everything around us, but from simply slowing down long enough to understand what is actually happening inside us. We live in a world that celebrates speed, fast decisions, fast results, fast success, fast solutions. But the human heart was never designed for constant acceleration. And when life becomes too fast, the first thing we lose is our inner balance. That is why, when tough times arrive, the instinct is often to run even faster, hoping that movement itself will save us. But movement without direction is just exhaustion. I once met a young man who was carrying tremendous pressure, work deadlines, relationship problems, financial worries, family expectations. Everything demanded his attention at the same time. He told me with a tired smile, "I don't have time to slow down. If I pause, everything will collapse." I gently told him a truth many of us learn too late. If you don't slow down, the collapse will come from within you. But life has a way of forcing us to pause. Sometimes it comes through burnout, sometimes through emotional breakdown, sometimes through illness, sometimes through loneliness, or through a moment where the noise becomes unbearable. But what if we didn't wait for life to force that pause? What if we consciously practice slowing down as an act of wisdom, an act of strength, an act of self-respect? Slowing down is not laziness, it is not avoidance, it is actually courage. The courage to face yourself without distraction. When we slow down, something powerful happens. The heart, which has been begging for attention, finally gets a chance to speak. And the truth is, most of our stress doesn't come from the situations outside of us. It comes from the stories we continue to tell ourselves in the rush of life. I'm falling behind, I'm not enough, I have to do everything alone, I can't afford to rest, people will judge me, everything depends on me. These thoughts become louder when we move too fast. But when we slow down, the same thoughts soften. We begin to see that some of the pressure was created by others, but much of the pressure was created by ourselves. Our own expectations, our own fears, our own insecurities, our own unwillingness to be gentle with our own soul. Slowing down also reconnects us with the present moment. A P we rarely visit because we are always racing toward the future. And yet, the present moment is the only place where healing happens, the only place where peace can be found. Imagine trying to drink water while running. Even the cleanest water spills. But when you stop, when you stand still, the same water sustains you. That is what slowing down does to your inner life. It allows peace to actually reach you. Many people think relaxation is something that arrives when circumstances improve. But real relaxation begins the moment you stop fighting the pace of life and allow yourself to breathe. Deep breathing, mindful pauses, moments of silence, small walks without your phone, allowing yourself to feel instead of pushing through every emotion. These are not luxuries, these are lifelines. When tough times come, the body tightens, the mind races, and the heart becomes overwhelmed. Slowing down gives each part of you a chance to catch up with the truth. The truth that you are still here. The truth that not everything needs an instant answer. The truth that clarity comes when noise decreases. Often when you pause long enough, you realize that many problems are not as urgent as they appeared. Many worries lose their strength when examined calmly. Many fears shrink when seen with a rested mind. And many decisions which seemed impossible in the storm of stress suddenly become simple when you regain your grounding. Slowing down also gives space for divine guidance. When everything is moving too fast, we don't hear the quiet whispers of wisdom within us. But in stillness, God speaks through clarity, through intuition, through a calm that feels almost like a gentle hand on the shoulder. Tough times can either drown us or deepen us, and the difference often depends on whether we slow down enough to listen. Relaxation, therefore, is not an escape from life. It is a way of meeting life with strength, softness, and awareness. It begins with one simple choice: to stop rushing, to breathe, to notice, to accept that you don't need to fix everything today. You don't need to carry the world. You don't need to run at a pace that destroys your peace. When you slow down, you give yourself the greatest gift of all, the chance to reset, realign, and rise again with clarity instead of chaos. And sometimes, that one pause becomes the turning point that carries you from overwhelm to inner freedom. When tough times arrive, the mind becomes the first battlefield. We often believe that the world outside is causing us stress. But the truth is that the most exhausting battles are the ones happening inside our own thoughts. And in moments of pressure, every thought begins to feel urgent. Every doubt feels like a threat. Every fear feels like a prediction. But not every thought deserves your attention. Not every fear is real. Not every mental noise needs to be entertained. This understanding is one of the greatest pathways to relaxation during difficult times. When we are hurting or overwhelmed, the mind starts throwing thoughts at us like waves during a storm. What if things get worse? Why is this happening to me? What if I fail again? What if I never recover? These thoughts feel powerful, but they are not always true. They are simply reactions, emotional echoes of fear, uncertainty, and the feeling of losing control. The problem begins when we start fighting each thought as if it were a real enemy. The more we battle them, the stronger they become. The more we try to silence them, the louder they scream. Sometimes the most peaceful thing you can do is to stop fighting your own mind. Or think of a lake. When the wind blows, the water becomes muddy, restless, unclear. If you jump into the lake and try to force the mud to settle by pushing it down with your hands, the water becomes even more disturbed. But if you simply step back and let the wind calm itself, the mud settles naturally. Your mind works the same way. During tough times, the emotional wind is strong. Thoughts rise like mud, but clarity comes when you stop forcing peace and start allowing stillness. When you stop reacting instantly to every uncomfortable thought, the mind gently begins to clear. This is why not every thought is worth engaging. Some thoughts come to test you, some come to distract you, and some come merely as temporary noise that dissolves the moment you stop feeding it attention. Many people suffer not because of their circumstances, but because they give too much power to their temporary thoughts. A simple fear becomes a story becomes a belief becomes anxiety, and suddenly the mind is running faster than reality itself. I once met a young woman who told me she suffered from constant overthinking. Every time life became difficult, her mind created 100 imaginary disasters. She said, "I try so hard to control my thoughts, but they overpower me." I told her gently, "Your goal is not to control every thought. Your goal is to choose which ones you give energy to." When she learned to watch her thoughts instead of wrestling with them, her inner world slowly became calmer. The storms didn't always disappear, but she learned how to stay steady in the middle of them. The mind becomes louder when we are scared, tired, or uncertain. Instead of arguing with every thought, relaxation comes when we learn to observe. When a thought says, "You can't handle this," instead of fighting it, simply say, "This is just a thought passing through my mind. It is not the truth." That small shift is powerful. It creates distance between you and your fear. It gives you space to breathe again. But when you stop taking every thought personally, you begin to reclaim your peace. You realize that your mind is like a sky. Thoughts are just clouds. Some are dark, some are light, some move fast, some linger for a moment. But none of them define the sky. None of them are permanent. None of them are you. You are the awareness behind the thoughts, not the thoughts themselves. And here is a beautiful truth. The less you fight your thoughts, the more control you gain over them. The less importance you give to negative thoughts, the weaker they become. The moment you stop reacting, the mind stops attacking. It softens, it becomes quieter. And in that quiet, you begin to hear wisdom instead of worry. You begin to feel hope instead of fear. You begin to experience peace instead of pressure. Relaxation during tough times is not about eliminating all negative thoughts. That is impossible. It is about learning to let thoughts come and go without letting them imprison you. Some worries may visit your mind, but they don't need to stay. Some fears may enter your awareness, but they don't need to dictate your actions. You can acknowledge a thought without believing it. You can feel an emotion without becoming it. When you stop fighting every thought, your inner world becomes lighter. You begin to realize that the storm was never as big as the fear inside it. You begin to see that peace is possible even when problems remain. And slowly, gently, you begin to relax. Not because life got easier, but because your mind stopped making it harder. There comes a point in every tough time where your own strength feels too small for the weight you're carrying. You try to be brave, you try to be calm, you try to push forward, to stay positive, to do everything you can, but the burden still feels heavy. And it is in that moment, when your human strength reaches its limit, that faith quietly steps forward. Faith doesn't come with noise or drama, it enters softly, like a gentle light in a dark room, reminding you that you are not walking alone. Many people misunderstand faith. They think faith means everything will go exactly the way they hope. But true faith is something deeper. It is the assurance that even when things don't go your way, there is still a way. It is the belief that there is a purpose behind your pain, even if you cannot see it yet. It is the trust that a higher hand is guiding you, even when the path feels unclear. Faith doesn't remove challenges. It gives you the courage to walk through them without losing yourself. I once met a woman who had gone through a series of heartbreaking events, losing her job, losing a loved one, and watching her dreams fall apart one by one. She told me something profound. She said, "I had no strength left to keep fighting my battles alone. So every night I would whisper, 'God, I cannot carry this today. Please carry me.' And somehow, even though nothing changed instantly, I felt supported, I felt lifted, I felt held." There was a softness in her voice, a quiet peace, if she had found strength not by doing more, but by surrendering more. Bar faith doesn't mean you will never feel overwhelmed. It means that when you are overwhelmed, you don't have to pretend to be invincible. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to hold yourself together perfectly. You simply need to remember that you are not carrying your struggles alone. There is a deeper strength, an invisible support, a loving presence walking beside you, even when you feel like you are walking through darkness. When you rely only on your own strength, life becomes heavy, too heavy. But when you lean on faith, something beautiful happens. The weight doesn't completely disappear, but you begin to feel a shift. The burden feels lighter because you are no longer fighting the storm alone. You begin to relax into the truth that you are guided, protected, and supported by something far greater than your circumstances. Faith also changes the way you see tough times. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" faith teaches you to ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" Instead of thinking, "I am being punished," faith whispers, "You are being strengthened." Instead of feeling abandoned, faith reminds you, "You are being prepared." These small shifts in perspective transform anxiety into acceptance, fear into trust, and chaos into clarity. And in this trust, you discover something profound. The more you let go of the need to control everything, the more peace you experience. Control is exhausting. Control creates tension. Control makes you believe that every outcome depends on you alone. But faith invites you to rest, to do your best, and leave the rest in divine hands. That surrender is not defeat, it is freedom, it is relaxation for the soul. Some people say, "I will have faith when life gets better," but faith is not the outcome. Faith is the anchor that keeps you steady while life is still uncertain. When storms rise, an anchor does not stop the waves, but it keeps the ship from drifting away. In the same way, faith does not remove your problems, but it prevents your heart from sinking under their weight. It holds you steady until the storm passes. There will be nights when tears come easily, when exhaustion feels too deep, when you lose the strength to understand what is happening. In those moments, speak gently to yourself. I do not need to figure everything out today. Lift your heart upward and trust that you are being led towards something meaningful, something healing, something that will make sense one day. Leaning on faith is not escaping reality. It is learning to walk through reality with grace. And slowly, you begin to notice the shift. You begin to breathe again. You begin to feel hope where you once felt fear. You begin to notice small signs, unexpected kindness, sudden clarity, moments of peace, a solution appearing just when you needed it. These are whispers of divine support. These are reminders that you are not forgotten. You are not unseen. You are not alone. When human strength ends, divine strength begins. And when you lean on that strength, relaxation becomes possible even in the midst of the storm. You no longer collapse under the weight of your struggles. You rise through them, guided, strengthened, and held by faith. In the middle of tough times, the heart naturally gravitates toward everything that is going wrong. It becomes so easy to see what's missing, who left, what failed, what hurt, and what broke. The mind zooms in on loss like a camera that refuses to focus on anything else. But in those moments, the quiet practice of gratitude becomes a lifeline, a way to breathe again when life feels heavy. Gratitude is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's not about ignoring your pain or denying your struggles. Gratitude is simply the choice to notice what is still good, what is still standing, what is still supporting you even when life seems harsh. During one of the most challenging seasons of my own life, I was speaking with an elderly gentleman. I shared with him the weight I was feeling, the pressures, the disappointments, the uncertainty. He listened with kindness in his eyes, nodded slowly, and said something I have never forgotten. My friend, count the blessings that stayed, not just the people who left. That sentence became like a soft light in a dark room, because gratitude doesn't erase what hurts, but it gently shifts your gaze to the parts of life that are still holding you together. Tough times often make us forget that even on the worst days, not everything is broken. Even when one door closes, not every door shuts. Even when one blessing leaves, not every blessing disappears. Gratitude reminds us that life is never completely empty, even when it feels that way. There is always something to hold on to. Your breath, your body, your lessons, your growth, your resilience, your memories, your faith, your relationships, your opportunities, your ability to try again. Sometimes the only thing you can be grateful for is that you made it through another day, and that alone is enough to begin healing. Gratitude also changes the emotional chemistry inside you. Worry contracts the heart. Gratitude expands it. Fear drains energy. Gratitude restores it. Stress tightens your mind. Gratitude creates space. When you focus only on what is wrong, your body becomes tense, your thoughts become narrow, and your spirit becomes tired. But the moment you acknowledge something good, even something small, the mind softens. The heart opens. You begin to breathe a little deeper. You begin to relax, not because the situation changed, but because your perspective did. Tough times can trick you into believing that life is only suffering. But gratitude gently proves otherwise. It reminds you that even in storms, there are moments of calm. Even in pain, there are moments of kindness. Even in despair, there are signs of hope. Think about the people who checked on you when you were hurting. Think about the lessons you learned through your mistakes. Think about the strength you discovered when you thought you had none left. These moments are not accidents. They are gifts, blessings disguised as ordinary life. I once met a young girl who survived a difficult childhood, marked by financial hardship and emotional struggles. But instead of becoming bitter, she developed a habit every night before sleeping. She would write down 3 things she was grateful for, even if they were tiny, like a warm meal, a smile from a stranger, or a beautiful sunset. She told me, some days I could only think of one thing, but that one thing was enough to remind me that my life wasn't just pain. Over time, gratitude rewired her outlook. It didn't remove her challenges, but it gave her the strength not to collapse under them. Gratitude is also a humble reminder that we are cared for, that we are supported, that life has not abandoned us. When we thank life for what remains, we begin to see that everything we truly need is already within or around us. Gratitude shifts the story from, I have nothing to, I still have something. And that something is often the bridge that carries us to better days. Relaxation begins when the heart stops wrestling with what it has lost and starts recognizing what it still holds. Gratitude creates inner comfort, like a warm blanket wrapped around a shivering soul. It tells you, you may be hurting, but you are not empty. You are not alone. There is still beauty left in your world. And sometimes that one realization is enough to make a heavy heart feel just a little lighter. So even in your darkest moments, search for one small blessing, one breath, one memory, one act of kindness, one moment of peace, one lesson learned, one person who cares. These small sparks of gratitude, when collected daily, become a flame that lights your path through the hardest nights. Gratitude doesn't remove the storm outside, but it gives you an umbrella inside, and that inner shelter is what allows you to walk through tough times with calmness, with strength, and with hope. There is something profoundly healing about turning your attention outward when life feels heavy inward. When tough times come, the natural tendency is to shrink into ourselves, to curl around our pain, to focus only on what we have lost, on what hurts, on what feels unfair. And while it is important to acknowledge your struggles, staying locked inside your own suffering can make the heart even heavier. But something surprising happens the moment you choose to serve someone else, even in a small way. Pain begins to loosen its grip, the heart begins to breathe again, and slowly, gently, you start feeling lighter. Not because your problems disappeared, but because your perspective expanded. Many years ago, I met a young woman recovering from a devastating heartbreak. She had lost the person she loved, and with that loss came confusion, loneliness, and a deep sense of rejection. She told me she felt stuck in her thoughts, unable to escape the loop of why me and what now. One day she was encouraged to volunteer at a local shelter. At first she resisted. She thought, how can I help anyone when I can't even help myself? But eventually she went, and something astonishing happened. As she served meals, listened to stories, and offered a smile to people going through their own hardships, a gentle shift began inside her. She told me, helping them didn't erase my pain, but it gave my heart a break from drowning in it. She wasn't running away from her struggle. She was simply widening her world enough to let healing enter. The PR service does that. It breaks the illusion that you are alone in your suffering. It reminds you that everyone is carrying something. Some silently, some visibly, some with courage, and some barely holding on. And when you extend a hand to someone else, your heart feels seen in the process. Because in offering compassion, you receive it. In giving hope, you feel it. In uplifting another soul, your own soul rises. Tough times often narrow our vision. We become so focused on our pain that everything else fades into the background. But serving others is like opening a window in a closed room. Fresh air enters, light enters, perspective enters. Suddenly, your own problems do not disappear, but they feel more manageable. They feel less suffocating. Because helping someone else reminds you of your own strength you didn't know you still had. Service is not always grand or dramatic. It doesn't require money, talent, or special skills. Sometimes service is simply listening to a friend, helping a stranger carry their groceries, comforting someone who is grieving, offering encouragement to someone who feels lost, or doing a small act of kindness when no one is watching. Every act of service says to the world, I want to be part of the healing, not the hurting. And when you choose to be part of the healing, you heal a part of yourself in the process. There is also a spiritual beauty in service. When you serve, you shift from asking, "What is life giving me?" to asking, "What can I give life?" This shift is powerful. It changes you from a victim of circumstances into a contributor to the world. And contributors feel stronger than victims. Contributors feel purposeful. Purpose is one of the greatest antidotes to pain. Bhakti, our service, is a bridge between struggle and strength. It lifts you gently from self-absorption into compassion. It shows you that even in your brokenness, you still have something valuable to offer. You still have kindness to give. You still have love to share. You still have time, energy, and words that can touch another human being. And when you see that you can make a difference, even while carrying your own battles, you begin to realize that your suffering has not defeated you. It has simply softened you. You start noticing that helping someone else smile brings a strange and sacred comfort. You feel more alive. You feel more connected. You feel more grounded. And in that grounding, stress begins to loosen, anxiety begins to dim, and the heart slowly finds space to rest. Service evolves your inner world. It transforms pain into empathy, empathy into action, and action into healing. Tough times do not disappear just because you serve others. But serving others keeps tough times from destroying you from within. It shifts your emotional landscape. It makes you realize that life is not only about what you're going through, but also about who you can become through it. And the beautiful irony is this: the moments you lift someone else are often the moments you lift yourself. Not because your circumstances changed, but because you changed. Your heart expanded. Your perspective broadened. Your inner strength awakened. When life feels overwhelming, do something small for someone else. Let your pain soften into compassion. Let your compassion become service. And let your service become the beginning of your healing. One of the greatest sources of stress during tough times is the constant attempt to control what is far beyond our reach. We try to change people who don't want to change. We try to rewrite the past that cannot be rewritten. We try to force outcomes that are not ready to unfold. And in this struggle, our heart becomes exhausted. Our mind becomes tense. Our spirit becomes restless. But relaxation begins the moment we learn a simple yet powerful truth. Not everything is ours to control. Some things are meant to be accepted, and some things are meant to be transformed. And wisdom is knowing the difference. There is a deep, quiet peace that comes when you stop fighting reality. This doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean lowering your standards. It doesn't mean tolerating injustice or staying in situations that harm you. Acceptance simply means acknowledging what is, instead of draining your energy wishing it were different. When you accept what cannot be changed, you free your heart from an invisible cage. You stop wrestling with things that only God, time, or destiny can resolve. And in that release, your mind finally breathes. I once met a man who held on to a painful memory for years, a betrayal that shattered his trust. He kept repeating the story in his mind, reliving each detail, analyzing what he could have done differently. He said to me, "I just want to change what happened." And I gently asked, "But can you?" He paused, and in that pause, tears filled his eyes. It wasn't the memory that hurt him anymore. It was the constant desire to change something that was already finished. When he finally accepted that the past could not be altered, a weight lifted off his shoulders. His peace did not come from forgetting. His peace came from accepting. That acceptance opened space for him to heal, to grow, and eventually to rebuild trust in a healthier way. Acceptance is not weakness. It is not surrendering to fate. It is simply redirecting your energy toward what truly matters. Instead of wasting emotional strength resisting what is already here, you invest your strength into transforming what can still be changed. Your habits, your mindset, your actions, your environment, your responses, your boundaries, your future. When you stop fighting the unchangeable, you suddenly have the energy to change the possible. Transformation begins where resistance ends. When you accept that a person is the way they are, You stop trying to force them into who you want them to be. You stop expecting apologies that won't come, explanations that won't arrive, or understanding from people who choose not to understand. This acceptance protects your peace. It allows you to respond wisely instead of reacting emotionally. And when you respond from clarity instead of pain, your life begins moving forward in healthier ways. Many tough times feel heavier than they truly are because we carry both the reality and the resistance. The situation itself might be difficult, but our refusal to accept it doubles the burden. It's like walking through rain. The rain isn't the problem, but if you resist it, complain about it, resent it, wish it away, you only make yourself wetter. Acceptance doesn't stop the rain, it simply helps you bring an umbrella. It helps you walk through it with strength instead of suffering. I've also seen acceptance transform people in beautiful ways. A woman who spent years in a toxic job finally accepted that the environment would not change no matter how hard she tried. That acceptance did not make her powerless. It empowered her to seek better opportunities, to grow new skills, to reclaim her worth. Acceptance did not trap her, it liberated her. Because once she stopped waiting for her circumstances to shift, she shifted herself. BR transformation always begins from within. You may not be able to change the world around you, but you can change the way you show up in it. You can change how you speak to yourself. You can change the habits that drain you. You can change the boundaries that protect your peace. You can change the direction of your future even if your past remains the same. The moment you stop resisting what is beyond your control and start transforming what is within your control, something powerful happens. Your anxiety decreases, your clarity increases, your strength returns, your heart relaxes. Not because life suddenly became easy, but because you stopped fighting unnecessary battles. Relaxation does not come from controlling life. It comes from cooperating with life. It comes from saying, this part I accept, this part I can change, and this part I release to something higher. In that balance, peace finds you. In that balance, wisdom grows. In that balance, you become stronger, calmer, and more aligned with the person you are meant to become. There is a powerful truth about tough times that we often realize only when we look back. They rarely break us the way we fear. More often, they break us open. Open to new understanding, open to deeper strength, open to the parts of ourselves we never knew existed. When life becomes difficult, we assume something is going terribly wrong. But what if the struggle is not a sign of failure, but a sign of growth? What if the pain you feel is not destroying you, but preparing you? But think of a seed planted in the soil. Before it becomes a tree, before it grows leaves, before it ever reaches sunlight, it must first break open in the darkness. If seeds had feelings, they might say, why am I being buried? Why is everything around me cold and uncertain? Why am I cracking apart? Yet that very breaking is the beginning of life. Without the crack, there is no growth. Without the darkness, there is no rooting. Without the pressure, there is no strength. The seed is not being destroyed, it is being transformed. We are, in the same way, tough times are not life burying you, they are life planting you. They are moments where your outer shell breaks so your inner strength can emerge. Sometimes life must shake you, stretch you, and challenge you so you can grow into the person you were always meant to be. And yes, it hurts. Growth often hurts. But pain is not always a punishment, sometimes it is preparation. I once met a young man who said his biggest heartbreak changed him forever. At first, he thought it broke him completely. But years later, he realized that heartbreak softened him in the right ways. It taught him compassion, humility, patience, and gratitude. It deepened his understanding of love. It shaped his priorities. It made him kinder. He told me, that moment didn't destroy me, it broke me open. And in that opening, he discovered wisdom he would never have found otherwise. Tough times also reveal your true strength. You never know how strong you are until strength is your only choice. You never know how patient you can be until impatience stops working. You never know how deeply you can trust until life takes away every certainty you depended on. You never know how much courage you have until fear stands in front of you demanding a response. Pressure doesn't create strength, it reveals it. Think of the strongest people you know. Every one of them carries a story. Not a story of easy days, but a story of battles survived. A story of nights spent crying, days spent doubting, moments spent standing at the edge of giving up. But they didn't give up. They broke open. They allowed pain to shape them rather than shatter them. And they became wiser, humbler, gentler, and more resilient because of it. Tough times are also invitations, quiet invitations to look within yourself. When everything outside you collapses, you are forced to meet the person inside you. And sometimes that meeting is the beginning of a new life. You begin to question what truly matters. You begin to understand what cannot be lost. You begin to value peace over approval, purpose over popularity, authenticity over perfection. Without the storm, you might never discover these truths. But pain also teaches surrender. When you reach a point where your efforts, your plans, your strategies no longer work, you learn to lean on something greater than yourself. You learn to trust the timing. You learn to trust the process. You learn to trust that God's delays are not denials and His detours are not rejections. And in that trust, a deep relaxation begins. One that doesn't come from the world outside you, but from faith inside you. In the moment, tough times feel like obstacles, but later you see they were pathways. They were bridges disguised as burdens. They were teachers disguised as tragedies. They were redirections disguised as disappointments. Everything you go through expands you. Everything that challenges you shapes you. Everything that hurts you prepares you for something greater. You are not fragile. You are not weak. You are not breaking apart.